Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to another episode of The Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Shan and Ryan after Everton 2, Man United 2 at Goodison Park. Toffees come racing out of the gates to an early 2-goal lead in the first half through some brilliant play, frankly, only to see United's first 2 shots on target of the match in the second half hit the back of the net on the way to a frustrating draw, of course, not even to mention the diabolical VAR penalty overturn, which we'll talk about in the course of the match. I'm going right into the summary quote of the day since it's my turn to choose, and I went with Bluest192, our Discord's high-profile insider and French football liaison expert, who said, "Frustrating that we let United back into it and didn't kill the game. Frustrating that we still need to learn how to play with a lead, but we're basically safe, and I have faith that we'll get better and figure things out over time. Unfortunate game that we should have won, but it is what it is. Not the end of the world. We still showed a lot of very good things, and there's reason for optimism. But also, F the Premier League." And I think that little tagline at the end is extremely accurate because just can't help but feeling like we got a little bit robbed of a penalty and a chance to win the game. But we're going to talk about all the action, all the goals in this episode. Before we get into it, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice if you enjoy the show. We really appreciate that. Follow us on socials, links in the description. Join our Discord, all that good stuff. And as we get into it, we had a pilgrimage for many of our fellow countrymen and continent men people. I'll hand it off to Ryan to shout out the NA Toffees.
Yeah, shout out to the NA Toffees, the North American Toffees. Tony Sampson front and center, and a lot of displays out there with the scarf that we have down here, thanks to a posting from the 1878s, and the North American Toffees were part of that as well. Helped sponsor the displays today, which was very much appreciated. Not enough also gets said probably about the 1878s and the great job they do in terms of creating atmosphere and banners and tifo and whatnot. Very much appreciated. But yeah, it's a shame kind of the result was what it was. I mean, draw is not the worst thing in the world, but I'm sure they had a fantastic time. It looked like I saw a lot of stuff on social media. I guess they were meeting with Alan Myers and several other different encounters. So shout out to those guys. It looks like a solid crew they brought over there. But, you can't say no to Tony Sampson. Let's be honest.
You certainly can. I mean, I think they were pushing close to 100 people. I don't know if they ultimately got that, but incredible display and just goes to show what an amazing network of supporters groups we have here in North America, and we're very grateful for them. On to score predictions, Sean, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, and fortunately, I won't have to spend 30 minutes of the podcast announcing the score predictions, Ryan. We have 2 this week, BCG Rose and When There Was a Will. So great job on predicting a 2-2. I know there was some mention of should a 2-0 count or a 2-1 count given the refereeing debacle. Unfortunately, the court has decided that, like VAR today, just not on our side. So going into lineups, James, to talk about Everton.
Yeah, quick one. Obviously just the one change, and it's Doucouré back in for Alcaraz after he dutifully served his 1-game suspension for the red card in the derby. I'm sure he was happy to do that, and he goes straight back in the team, which I know, given Alcaraz's performance last week, some people were thinking maybe he'd keep his place, but I think in a game like this, in a Moyes team, it's really kind of an obvious decision to keep Doucouré.
I think it's also tough to judge that until you understand how we're going to come out and play, and I think when we get into the tactical elements of what we were trying to do, it's probably hard to argue that Doucouré was the wrong choice. I think he probably was looking at how we set up and how we acted.
Totally agree. And I think that this game, and many people said it as we're talking in the match day thread of our Discord, just wish we could have had Njai on the left. It would have been so fun to watch. And I think he really, really could have exploited that United defense. But alas, of course, he remains injured. So we then take a look at the visiting side, Manchester United. Quick trip up the road to Goodison Park for them. And we know, as we talked about on the last episode, not having the best of years.
Yeah, so looking at United's lineup, they've basically made one change. Manuel Ugarte returns from injury, which puts Garnacho on the bench. Really happy about that, just because we didn't need another Puskas award in the first 10 minutes of the game. But that puts him on the bench. It puts Bruno in an advanced position. Fortunately for us, Casemiro is still on the pitch, but really looking at that back line, really just slow, really comes to mind. Maguire and De Ligt, as you kind of, as we'll talk about, just, Maguire in his day was a very good center back. I think that day has passed. De Ligt, as Ryan talked about, is very much Harry Maguire, just with a smaller head. And Mazraoui, good player, so nothing really to say about him specifically. But yeah, Amorim sticking with his system as we've talked about before, really not changing anything. He's going to stick with what he knows. Dorgu, obviously they signed him, and we talked about him a little bit on the last pod. Really good player, and I think he had a really good match today, and we'll get into that. Delo, another good kind of attacking back, not having the greatest season, but still definitely a threat. Ugarte, good player, but next to Casemiro, I don't think anybody's going to look that great, right? He just has been awful, and that's really kind of being nice to them. And then you look at that front three. On paper, they look good, but when you look at their actual product, Bruno cannot place a pass correctly to save his life at times. Xerxes is just I think he's trying to find his right position in that team, but he's just, to Amorim and going from Ten Hag, just kind of another sign of just really poor recruitment and really poor continuity from United. And Rasmus Højlund, of course, comes from Atalanta, massive fee, and just really hasn't found his footing in the Premier League this season. Had a decent season last year. But kind of when I saw that lineup on paper, I was like, not the greatest. But I will say about Bruno and specifically Xerxes, they are men of moments. So they do have that quality at times to come up big when the team needs them. So that was really my only fear looking at it. But in terms of that midfield and defense, not good at all.
I mean, I don't blame him for the setup. You kind of look at these players and you think, okay, a little bit of a 3-4-2-1 makes sense. You know what I mean? Like Bruno and Xerxes. Xerxes more of a 10 really anyway. You could see them kind of combining a little bit behind, and hopefully Højlund can kind of run in behind a little bit or threaten the back line. But just fundamentally, Sean, how do you get around the fact that some of these guys just aren't very good?
Yeah, and I don't think like putting Christian Eriksen in that spot is going to solve many problems in terms of controlling the midfield, right? So they don't, it was very much like us. We don't have, not like us in the sense of, they've overspent wildly on players, but given the injury list as well as who they had on the bench, I mean, they couldn't really bring anybody. They're counting on these 18-year-old kids, right? So yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I think the ultimate, though, is the back line, and that's really where you can't do much with that back line. I don't know what you do with these guys. You can't. So, in essence, it kind of morphs into a back three when Dorgu's pushed forward. Yeah, I liked what I saw him before. He's certainly a talent. I think he over-pursues the ball and gets a little too aggressive at times on defense, but if he's playing wingback, that should be fine. To me, the key matchup today, though, was how Xerxes and Bruno worked together against our midfield, and I think that was really the main element of the ball, or the name element of the match. So could we protect in between the lines well enough to keep them far enough away from the final third so they didn't really generate a whole lot? And I think we were somewhat successful from an open play standpoint. I mean, Bruno had 14 passes into the final third. That's it. He ended up dropping deeper just to get on the ball more and trying to find Xerxes. But, getting in the timeline really quickly, our early tactics made it difficult for them to move the ball up the pitch effectively. And that's what happens. I mean, look at that back line. Do you have faith in any one of those guys, Maguire, Delete, really being able to move the ball out from deeper positions? Casemiro's not a guy that's going to drop deeper anymore and on the half turn move the ball. He was great once. I mean, there's no denying. He's debatably the best defensive mid on the planet for a while, but that is not him anymore. James Garner was a concern for me just from a positional standpoint, but it almost didn't matter because in the first 20 minutes or so, Idrissa Gana played some of the best defensive midfield I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm not exaggerating. When we get into the numbers here in a little bit, they are insane. And then, speaking to your comment before on lineups, James, Doucouré was a key part of this high pressure that we were applying.
Yeah, Everton come out the gates absolutely at the races and are all over United from the jump. The high pressure, United looked all out of sorts, could not get the ball out of their final third. Doucouré, as to your point, high pressing, trying to just get really aggressive, pushing all the way to their back line, and they just were folding. They were conceding the ball, giving us the ball in dangerous areas. Unfortunately, we weren't able to create a ton from those high turnovers, but encouraging nevertheless, and clearly helping the crowd get into the game.
Yeah, you thought maybe they had a mistake in them, and that's kind of what happened when we kind of break through the dam here. But, fundamentally, too, I don't even think our pressure was all that organized. There was some confusion, but the intensity was there. And, again, I just think it speaks to lack of quality. Onano's good with the ball, too, but you could tell there was really no one for them to find. And I thought we did a good job. Key, I think, did a really good job preventing Xerxes from getting the ball. But a lot of this was Ghana. I mean, first 18 minutes, guys, he was 4-4 in tackles. I mean, I suggested that he needs like a tackle sign up on on the terrace, kind of like in baseball we do in America with like the K signs when, pitchers out there striking people out. I mean, it's just absurd. He was almost doing it by himself, so I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I mean, ideally, you don't want him having to make those plays, but that was their only connection into attack. Otherwise, they had to force everything to their fullbacks and just play the ball long, and they just lost it. Couple opportunities. The game started to open up a little bit for us. In the 17th minute, Garner gets clipped here. I kind of wonder if he goes down, does he get a penalty call? And then I realize it's against United, so no, it's probably good to stand up. And then we finally break through in the 19th, and of course it is, and always had to be, Norberto himself.
Yeah, I mean, what to say about this? Let's start with United. Absolutely horrific defending. De Ligt, as we've mentioned, I think either there was cement on the Goodison tour or whatnot, because he could not move his feet for the life of him on this play. But yeah, once again, Doucouré header. Jesper might have nicked it, but now I think the Premier League has set the standard from last week of just looking at a VAR play for more than 5 minutes for no freaking reason. So that's just something to expect going forward. But yeah, I don't even understand why that had anything to do with the play, but nonetheless, Beto lets it run across his body really well and just good hit. That's the type of shot you want to take in traffic, and just a really good goal and something that, when you think of players to be happy for at the moment, there's nobody more than him. I mean, this is, I think we talked about it, James, beforehand, his 5th goal in the last 4. I mean, it's looking really, really good for him. A 6th goal of the season. And really, yeah, he's done really well so far under Moyes.
Just perfect summary of the opening several minutes. Everton winning all the battles in the box. United unable to clear their lines. And then Doucouré getting on the end of it. But the technique from Beto on this goal is just so good. He lets the ball run across his body as he kind of turns his hips, hits the ball into the ground, and it's past Onana without really a prayer to save it. And deservedly up at that point, Everton. It's the first meaningful good chance, but it had been coming and you could feel it.
Great composure by Beto. That's what he's shown us so far. He really has. I mean, and we thought the more and more he played, he'd get better. I wouldn't say he necessarily had the greatest game today, but to be perfectly honest, they were allowed to jump all over him and tackle him all match. And Maguire and De Ligt are both strong guys. Again, feet in concrete for sure. How could you have watched De Ligt play? It's not like he was playing in lower leagues that you had to go and search for him and think that this guy was worth the money they paid him. I know his wages are outrageous too. It's just unbelievable. But thanks for us keeping JB for another year, and they got Euro and De Ligt. I mean, that was the trade-off. Nice move. This comes from @BetFred. That's debatable that we're endorsing a betting site, I think. But anyway, the point is Beto has scored more goals in his 6 Premier League matches under David Moyes, 5, than he did in 41 matches under Sean Dyche. Transformed by football genius. Okay, that may be overstepping a little bit. But, the interesting part about this was, too, you could tell United wanted none of us at this point. It was, we were very aggressive. At one point, Mikalenko kind of stomps on, I think it was Delot, and he got up, and Garner just got right in his face. I mean, we're playing with a little bit of fire this time, and sure enough, we break through again in the 32nd with the man. Good thing we started that guy.
Yeah, justifying his inclusion in the team for sure. It's Doucouré with the headed finish, throwing himself into a bunch of bodies to get on the end of it. And it starts with a good pass across his body from Beto. Maguire, again, slow, can't adjust. Jag, actually, I thought was going to be the one who puts this away, but does a little too much with the ball at his feet, over dribbling, and forces the save from Onana. Maguire just completely unaware. Doucouré coming in behind him. There's so little awareness and just anticipation and execution. Rises up above him, gets his head on it, and buries it in the back of the net. And again, Everton deservedly at this point 2-0 up. It felt like how many are we going to score today? This is just the start.
I will say, if the Premier League ever wants to start a volleyball team, put Joel Veltman on it and put Andre Onana on it, because Andre Onana served that ball up so well. It was just this perfect, hit in the air, and Doucouré just decided to just spike it into the net. Of course, not using his hands. So yeah, to your point, James, decent from Jack also. Of course, I know we're going to, criticize right now Jack and Jesper for the lack of goal scoring, but I think the composure to at least get it on net. Of course, Onana makes a meal of it. Maguire, I think if you asked him about the goal, he would be completely clueless, to your point. and just love Doucouré's energy on this to just kind of really take initiative, because he was the only one in that play that did.
United team looks dead at this point. I mean,
So
they kept
dead.
going. I mean, they were trying to create a narrative with Sir Alex on the sidelines, and they kept showing Amarin, and he just doesn't know what to do. And I don't blame him. I mean, you look at the bench, there's no options really there. Maybe Garnacho, that's about it. The body language looks terrible. No one's going in for battles. You could tell there's some frustration there, but not necessarily fight. And this, to me, there were a lot of plays early in this match where there were a lot of low tackles that I thought were fairly dangerous. Mikalenko gets a combination here. He gets stud from behind and then gets flat out cleated from the front. I'm not saying this is a red card, but there's not even a look at it. And, 37 minutes in, we've got 6 fouls. It seemed light. I mean, lots of questionable tackles. So, and the reason why I bring this up is because things totally changed in the second half. It's like we kind of let all this stuff go and whatnot. United started growing a little bit into the match, but there just really wasn't a great threat from them from open play. But you could tell we're a little tired. I mean, you can't keep that up the whole match, but every time it looked like we were going to run out of steam a little bit, you saw a combination play and something happened. But I still love the Discord exchange on the Mikalenko thing. OG Shill, Alon saw red for less. T-Rev, God, that's painful. Straight cleats. And then you guys kind of jumped in here with an Owie and an Ugarte being a dirty lad today. And Sludvig, that's a horrible tackle. But it was like no mention that anything happened. It was very strange. So we were still dangerous on the counter at this point, too. There's a foul call at one point against Jesper on Dorku that wasn't a foul at all. And, I mean, really, United get their first shot in the 42nd minute with like a curler from Ugarte that just doesn't really threaten that much. And you could tell they weren't interested. Doucouré was dropping deeper. He was kind of our extra guy. So when we wanted to get control, he would drop deeper, wide open. No one picked him up. I mean, their defensive mids were just standing there. They were not reacting to anything. And we could have had the ball a little bit more. In fact, if anything, I think we should have been maybe even slightly more patient. And then we get another foul in the 48th minute on O'Brien on Dorku, which I think was a total flop, that he shows him yellow for. I think it was his only foul of the match. So I don't know. It's just very strange to me how some of this was happening. And actually, we get pretty close to scoring right before half even.
Yeah, this is obviously a good amount of stoppage time at the end of the first half because of the lengthy VAR review and whatnot. There's a really good long ball to Jake O'Brien, Doucouré running in behind. That looked like a sort of orchestrated play that we had set up in advance, which was really nice. And you saw glimpses of that throughout the first half as well, like guys clearly being coached on spaces to run into. And the players have alluded to that, some of the stuff that Moyes and his coaching team are doing in training. But then in the 51st, right before the final whistle, Doucouré has this cross for Beto, and Mazurai saves a goal. Goes for a corner, and we have a few shots, and then Onana comes out and claims it. I mean, it would have been really nice to have another 3-0 lead at halftime, and this is very close to being just that.
Mazraoui put his body on the line a lot today. He got kicked a lot. I mean, it takes a little bit of courage on the backside to jump in front of Beto and take that one. He blocks it, saves a goal, but otherwise the awareness is completely absent for the other center half. So credit to him. He's a pretty good player. I wasn't surprised he didn't last 90, but either way, we get into halftime and you look at the numbers and it's just, I mean, all United has is kind of the Xerxes header off a set piece and that Ugarte curler that didn't amount to anything. I mean, they literally had 0.04 expected goals to Everton's 1.41. Shots were 4-2, but we had 4 shots on target. They had none. 15-6 in touches in the box in the first half. And looking back on it, I mean, Doucouré with an assist and a goal. Interesting, right? Everyone was calling for Charlie to play because he had an assist and a goal. Well, it took Doucouré 32 minutes to equal him.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Ryan, it's of course falling in love with a lone player with Charlie, of course, with the performance last week, but at the same time, and we talked about it, right? Like the better Charlie does, I feel like that will only make Doucouré do better. It's just some of this healthy competition in positions that we're going to start to get once we start to get healthy. It's just, everybody can succeed, right? But at the end of the day, we've seen the stats when you look at Doucouré on the field and off the field for this team, right? He is truly invaluable to the operation of Everton. But then, kind of going into United have only scored 1 goal in the first half of their 11 games, kind of a crazy stat.
I saw that number. Yeah. That's wild. Kind of indicative of maybe, obviously their trend in play, not starting games well. And obviously they're not playing well in general, including second halves. But I saw that, I think, at halftime, and I was like, oh, that kind of worries me a little bit. Like, we maybe should have taken more advantage of the overwhelming dominance we had in that first half in front of.
I mean, Yeah, but there's a reason for that. Look at that side. Where are these goals coming from? I mean, Højlund, just because he costs a lot of money doesn't mean he's going to bang them in the Premier League. I mean, Garnacho can score a little bit, Xerxes a little bit, but if they can't get the ball, it doesn't matter. With Diallo going out for them, I mean, he is such a massive loss. I mean, it is shocking how little quality this team has in the attacking areas. I mean, we joke around about how bad they are in the back line, but their attacking may be even worse. I mean, it's just crazy to me, especially spending all that money. I still, to me, though, that first half, I mean, if there is a midfielder that has played better behind the ball than Idrissa Gana Gueye did in that match, I mean, he basically took Xerxes completely out of the match. He stifled any sort of opportunity that Manchester United had of attacking. And I'm sure Amorin's thinking, with the guys he's playing at wingbacks and in essence 3 defensive players behind them, he's not thinking this is going to be a high-scoring match. He's trying to control the match a little bit. And for them to get picked apart and give up two goals, in essence, with really 5 defenders on the pitch and 2 very defensive midfielders, or pardon me, Casemiro on there is supposed to be a defensive midfielder along with Ugarte. There's just no excuse for that. I mean, to beat that badly and give up that many chances with those players and that personnel, I understand why he's frustrated. I was curious how they were going to change going in the second half. I mean, were they going to keep Xerxes higher? Bruno had to drop down deep so much just to win the ball. That just gets him so far away from goal. What was going to change? With that being said, you had to figure there's no way we could keep up the intensity throughout the whole match.
Yeah, and I think you started to see that fade towards the end of the first half, and this has been a theme of an Everton team that likes to start out aggressively pressing. Is obviously you can't maintain that for the full 90 minutes, but what is the fallback there? Is the fall, and we saw what it was ultimately. But when you take your foot off the gas just slightly, are you able to still contain the opposition and keep them at arm's length?
I mean, yeah, but I think in this particular instance, you look at how they should play. I mean, a lot of this is game state.
Sure,
they can have the ball all they want, far from goal. So what? What's really going to make the difference? And that was the question, what could happen? And as we started to pull off a little bit, I mean, we still, at the very beginning of the second half, we had chances.
Yeah, Jack had one across that he played to the far corner of the 6, and Branthwaite's able to get it on net. It's a decent save from Onana. And again, chances there. But then this is where I think really the match starts to fall apart, and you see in the 50th minute, Ashley Young warming up, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like something I'd be looking to do at this point in the game if I were David Moyes personally, and really questioning who he'd come in for. Lindstrom seemed to be the rational choice just based on position, but Lindstrom had been definitely working really hard up to this point. And then you see that he's starting to struggle, and then of course eventually he comes on, not before United get a corner, but then Young comes on for Jesper coming off like kind of breathing awkwardly, looking like he's in some pain, but no obvious play that led to any kind of injury. Come to find out that after the match, David Moyes confirmed that he was withdrawn with quote-unquote illness. So maybe just some respiratory thing, that his cardio wasn't 100% there.
That's a pretty good performance for a guy sick.
I think he was just sick of Andy Madley. That's why he came off. So, yeah.
That I think we were all much sicker about him at the end of the match anyway. There was another player soon after that where another absolute dive, call on Mikalenko, another terrible call. And it just seemed like at this point, it wasn't so much momentum, but it was just utterly ridiculous. Now he's suddenly calling stuff that he didn't call in the first half. And so many of these calls I don't think are fouls. Maguire was diving all over the pitch. There was one play where Tark gets across him, not a foul, and they don't call this one, and Maguire goes down like he's shot and dead. It just, I don't understand it at all. It just kept happening, too. It was hard to ignore.
It's truly embarrassing to me. It's like, I understand United's kind of on this terrible run of form, but and I actually have a lot of respect for Harry Maguire. I think, in terms of his day, he's a pretty good defender. I think he's unfairly criticized at times. But what he was doing today was an abomination. Some of these dives were, especially United fans getting on Ashley Young at the end. It's just, look at your own team, man. Because some of these dives were absolutely horrific. And the fact that the ref was rewarding them only made them want to do it more, which was so frustrating.
Yeah, and you could say that, the Young sub coincides with us sort of withdrawing a little bit, getting a little bit more compact at the back, but it also coincides perfectly with when Andy Madley decides he's going to ref this game completely differently and start rewarding dives. So those two things sort of dovetail together, leading to United starting to get a foothold, starting to create chances. They get a foul in the 57th for Harrison coming in late on Mazraoui.
Was that a foul in the first half?
No.
He barely made contact with him. Mazraoui follows through into him. I mean, you if you want to call that all match, that's fine running in front of someone. So when they extend after kicking a ball, I'm okay with that. But like, you can't just suddenly start calling it now. And fundamentally, all their chances were on set pieces. And so, over time, of course, they're going to get a foothold in the game when they get to take set pieces. And that was the only way they could get the ball forward. I mean, yes, eventually we're going to run out of gas and, Bruno's going to find Xerxes a couple times. But, the one thing, though, that Manchester United still had not adjusted to this point, when we did want to get a little more control, Doucouré's still the open guy. He's still a free man. He's still coming deeper. So there were still chances of controlling the match a little bit. I do like some of the commentary, though, in general. I like what Sleazy Toffee, Lindstrom Stan writes here. Maybe Sleaze was just mad because Lindstrom got subbed out, but I mean, he's totally right about this.
Yeah, Sleazy's got a good comment. Not enough reactions in here, being the Discord, about the commentator spending half the game complaining about how easy players go down, and the other half saying, you can't give that foul, he didn't go down. And this match was a really good encapsulation of like that dynamic of, you talk about rewarding flopping being a huge endemic problem in the game, but then you have like the James Garner thing in the first half where he plays through the contact and it's never even mentioned again, much less looked at by VAR. So you're kind of caught in two minds of what do you even do in this situation? And obviously Madley went towards, we're just going to reward the flops all out, not even going to try to hide it. Every time you flop, you're going to get a call for Manchester United. Yes, specifically, not Everton.
Well, and look, I mean, what ultimately happened here is, by the way, how about the JB back header to Pickford?
Insane.
Why would he? I cannot believe he did that. I mean, he clearly was. I know. I mean, he clearly was aware that was an isolated player. The second that happens, like, did he really do that? Maybe that was his way of saying, real smart move by signing those two guys instead of me, United. So right after this, by the way, United make a sub, and you could tell Amarin is thinking, I got to get in this game somehow. Something has to change. While, yes, we're getting every foul call, we're still not even generating that much. So he puts Garnacho on. We knew that was going to happen eventually, and takes Casemiro off. Wombat has a good comment on this one, too. His comment is, how is that center mid going to function without Casemiro, who was basically absent the whole match? So there's not really much of a risk here. You think, they're going to be open in the back. It doesn't matter, man. I mean, Casemiro's just collecting a paycheck at this point. It's so funny. In the 62nd minute, again, they call a foul on Beto, which is... It's like that wasn't a foul in the first half. What are we talking about here? And then Garner lays one on Delo, which he doesn't at all. I don't even know if he made any contact. Very soft, and it's a yellow. At this point, it's just getting insane to me. It's totally ridiculous. Can we talk about the Jake O'Brien play in the 65th, by the way? Like, a guy that big should not be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, and we've kind of talked about this on the last pod, but so Jake O'Brien carries wide, a lovely cross, and a really good volley from Doucouré for, all the plaudits or criticism he gets. That's just a good save by Onana. So you look at that play as a whole. But once again, Jake O'Brien, throughout the collective kind of summary of this game, you see those diagonal balls continue to get better and better, and he's getting more confident. You see the progressions in the final third. And it's really good to see, because I think you can just tell that even though he's still playing out of position, the guy is getting supremely confident, both defensively and of course, on the offensive end.
There's also one play in the first half that I didn't mention where he was going kind of shoulder to shoulder with Dorgu and just completely bodied him. The physical mismatch was hilarious, and that's what you get with a 6'5" guy playing right back.
And Dorgu is not small and not weak. I mean, but he looks like a baby compared to Jake. So this is another one where in the 66th minute, Beto's making Maguire's life miserable at this point. He's smashing into him all over the place. And I don't know if Beto's doing great. He was a little isolated at this point because we're playing behind it. But Beto gets around him, gets past him, he gets taken down. And there's no yellow. I just cannot fathom that. I mean, talk about, at this point you're thinking, is this guy literally, I mean, I feel like we're getting cheated. Because, I mean, you give two totally weak yellows for O'Brien and Garner, and you don't call this one, especially when Maguire's also diving all over the place. And then there's another one where they call another foul in the 68, where there's no way it's a foul for Everton again. And and you're thinking, wow, they're really trying to get us back and get them back into the game. How about this free kick in the 68? Explain this to me. What the heck? Like, it just hits Doucouré's arm, I guess. I don't like this call to begin with in terms of the foul, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think Ambrose said it, Doucouré was doing the YMCA when he jumped in the air, and so it did hit his hand. It was a handball, and as I kind of said, 5-yard penalty, still third down, and of course, in just typical United fashion, right? They get a really favorable call. The handball is a handball, right? I'm not going to argue that. And then it just gets
it's the initial foul that's the issue.
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes into a perfect spot for where, Bruno could just hit this. And unfortunately, Pickford gambles, and and it's taken pretty well by Bruno, who probably sees that and puts in the bottom right corner, and it's 2-1. And of course, we're all feeling nervous again.
Yeah, I think you got to trust your wall there. To me, if it goes over the wall up and over and he scores, great. Kudos to him. Good job. Interesting sub in the 70th minute. I mean, this right here is this says everything about this United team. I mean, where they're at as a team. I mean, Cheeto Obi comes in and Yoro comes in for Højlund and Mazraoui. I mean, that is kind of sad, to be perfectly honest. Like, we have no bench. We've not been able to buy players. We have no depth. I get it. But that's the play they bring it. I mean, yes, Euro was 40 million pounds, but I don't know. That being said, at this point, we are packing it in. I mean, there's no question about it. Part of it's the constant fouls and the free kicks that are just nonsense that's allowing United to retain the ball, but we're in essence conceding possession. I mean, from the 75th minute on, it's 84.9% possession the rest of the way for United. We had only 9 accurate passes to 109 for United after the 75th minute. However, we had 2 shots on target just like they did. So that's what's frustrating about this. It's like they're not really creating anything. But sure enough, in the 78th minute, they tie it up on yet again a set piece. Now in this one, Young probably fouls him here. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. I'm not so sure about the yellow. I think that's a little bit absurd, but
Soft
fine,
yellow.
Whatever. Yeah, come on, man, whatever. And it happens. It's frustrating, but again, this is still accumulation. I mean, they're not getting the ball in these positions because of anything they're doing in open play.
Yeah, it's just set piece execution, if you can even call it that at this point, because Doucouré fouls and gives United another free kick after the first one, and then it's the ball played in. Beto wins it, but he just sort of tees it up for Ugarte to come in and rip a pretty nasty volley that goes into the back of the net. I mean, it's hit well. It's not placed perfectly or anything, but it has so much pace on it from such a short distance. There's really nothing Pickford can do. Branthwaite's on the ground there.
I don't know if I think they maybe said they were VAR checking for a potential foul, since that seems like what they were doing all day today. They had to have a VAR check. If it's a goal, they have to have a VAR check. Notice this one didn't take very long, though, of course.
Yeah, of course not. It doesn't take long, and they just immediately give it. And so we're level with 12 minutes of regular time to play plus stoppage time. And immediately Moyes has seen enough and decides to make the sub. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's a little late for these subs. He brings on, of course, Alcaraz for Doucouré, which I think makes total sense, and then Tim for Gardner, which seems to be really the only options he has in terms of trying to pursue a third goal. Just a very limited bench for Everton. So he makes the subs he can, but the timing of it just kind of sucks because we probably could have used some fresh legs in the moments leading up to this.
Maybe the problem is you get fresh legs, and what do you give up at this point? You're behind the ball and you're defending and you're winning 2-1 at this point. I don't want these guys in. Like, the last people I want in a match if we're winning are these guys. I mean, not the last people, but unless you're going to put Charlie in a wide position, have him run with the ball a little bit, and maybe try and hit him on the counter. Because I will say this, they were pushed up so high, including their center backs, and those guys are slow as molasses. That would have been the chance to get by him and create stuff. And we did threaten a couple times there, even if it wasn't really quite like that. But yeah, Tim had about 2 moments the rest of this match, and they were all completely awful. His incredible desire to dribble every time, no matter where he is on the pitch, and doesn't know what to do. Complete lack of awareness. They probably could have scored to win the match on the backside, but Tim didn't even check his shoulder to realize Xerxes was there. You would have loved to see Charlie pick up the ball deeper and run with it, but he's not really going to be someone that plays off the ball incredibly well defensively. How about this foul call also later in, I think it was around the 80th, where Garnacho just absolutely dives. Tark, this is one where Tark hits the ball, I think, and I don't even know why he dove. Maybe it's because the ball got cut up under his feet, but this was so blatantly not a foul that they call. It's just at this point, you're like, we're going to get cheated and lose the match.
Yeah, and then, of course, what we see after the fact is a corner to United and just another, take your pick of embarrassing moments from them today. The shot goes off JB's head, and they think it went off his hand, and, of course, all of us are a bit nervous that don't see the play real time. because six United players are going to the ref just basically, and then you see the replay and it like he's down he's down on the pitch.
Well, hits him in the
holding his head.
His hand from his head, though. I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's not a penalty.
Yeah,
so
that's not a penalty. Yeah, exactly. So, and then of course JB's getting treatment in the 83rd. This is the chance that I think I was really bummed about in the 87th. Really good cross from Ashley Young. Takes a really good first touch. Takes time to kind of see the pitch. Understands where he's at. Great cross to Beto, and he just cannot get enough on it. And it's pretty much a layup for Onana. And you look at that, and you're just thinking, he could have done a little bit better. I was surprised. The announcers, I don't think they said has to score, but I could have easily seen that. But yeah, it's a tough chance. I expected with the run of form he's on to challenge Onana a little bit better, but like, of course, I'm not blaming him whatsoever on saying, well, what an egregious miss.
He was up there. I mean, he got a good piece of it too, for sure. He did. I mean, that was almost impressive in its own right. Yeah, again, headed chances are difficult. It's hard to hit them straight. It would have been nice for sure. How about this play in the 89th, since I'm just honing in on the referee at this point because it was that egregious. Mikalenko gets completely cleared out on the edge of the box. Like, completely cleared out. It's so bad that everyone on the pitch stops, assuming it's a foul. And it's not. And eventually the ball gets back to Bruno. He keeps cutting back here and there. It's a great shot from 20 yards. Picked us pretty well here. There's a lot of velocity on this, and it looks like it's going to go bar down, and it's just nothing. Then there's a yellow. At this point, did he want to just try and even up the yellows? Is that's what it is? Like, Chido Obi is time wasting? Like, what the heck is this? And then in the 94th, we feel like, wow, we finally have our moment. Justice is finally served. Points to the spot. It's a play where a shot comes in, rebound comes out. Ashley Young, Johnny on the spot, is going to get to the ball first for sure. I mean, he does really well here to stay on. He's about to jump to it. He gets his shirt clearly yanked behind by Delete. McGuire's involved in the play. Maybe he gets him a little bit with the body and kind of reaches around him a little bit. That wasn't really the big thing. And, penalty. I'm thinking, who's going to take this? I think that was kind of the bigger question, not whether we deserved it or not. And then they go to VAR, and you're thinking, what on earth could they possibly be checking here? And they wave it off. And to me, this is, I don't know what to say. I mean, there's been some dialogue by some other people. Someone maybe thought it was Beto. It wasn't. And then, so Patty's tweet, I think, kind of captures what maybe the controversy was.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is the application of the technology. And we have a few comments that allude to it. But after I watched the replays they were showing on the broadcast, I was also kind of confused how Young fell the way he did, because he falls in almost a way that you don't really see you see like McGuire's hand on his hip, and you see Young just kind of like legs pop up and he just kind of plops on the ground. But turns out there's this other angle from the mouth of the goal from one of the posts where you clearly see a double shirt pull behind Young. You clearly see the ball out in front and the fact that there's no one else that's going to be able to get to it before him, and you see him go down. And it doesn't even seem like, to Patty's point in his tweet, was the referee even shown that angle of the play? That's crazy that you're going to the video review and you have this angle available and you don't use it, and it completely distorts the way the play is reviewed and the calls eventually made. Also, just want to give a shout out to the fact that, once again, they bring the referee over to the monitor to overturn it every single time. Why even go through the song and dance? It's pointless.
It's not an assistant to the referee. They botched this from the get-go. I don't know why they're even masquerading like it's why even have them on the pitch side? Remember when they ignored them, by the way? People have forgotten it. Like, it's unbelievable if you think about what the PGMOL has done for this implementation. They've never wanted to clearly. They've tried to sabotage it from day one. But this is unbelievable. Like, he goes there, and, Ian Crawford, at Crawford Tartan, I think, says it very well. They are filtering what they want the ref to see to influence decisions. Got his shirt pulled. The ref gave it. It was not a clear and obvious error. VAR overstepped their remit. Scandalous decision, because to me, this is once again re-officiating the match. And what I don't understand is how can you go there? Like, the way it's supposed to work when you hear it in other leagues is the head referee is the one talking to the VAR about showing what they want to see. Like, normally what they do is come in here. It's not about what they want their head ref to see. That has nothing to do with it, frankly. It's when the referee says, okay, if you think there's a different angle, cool, show me it. Show me the original. Like, the head ref needs to be in control here. It's his job. He owns it. He tells them what he wants to see. He could tell these guys to go jump in the lake. But we've had, maybe one or two ever where a head referee's gone to the screen and kept his call? Yeah, that does not how it works in other leagues. Referees go there all the time. Either keep the call or change it. It's not that big a deal. I don't know. Interesting comment by Ben Grounds, too, because do we think this is just a limitation of camera angles? I can't imagine this is true.
Yeah, Ben Grounds, at Ben Islington. There have been too many cases now where TV companies have both the angles, the ability to blow up imagery, and slow down points of contact to do a far better job than VAR. This is no longer up for debate. Despite the technology being in its sixth season, it is inexcusable. One thing I'd also like to mention, I don't understand why they were reviewing the Maguire contact when the De Ligt contact was clear and obvious in the sense of, he you see that angle as James
it had nothing to do with it, Sean.
It has nothing to do with it. Yeah. So it's just alone from that premise, right? They're trying to already overturn the call. You can just tell after reflection, because De Ligt clearly fouls him, right? It's like you're completely ignoring everything that happened beforehand and just trying to kind of look at one moment in time to try to overturn a call, which is absolute, it's terrible.
So to Ben's point, to me, if you have all the angles on this and you see it like we saw it at home, for those of us who are not able to go to the match, it's obvious it's just a shirt pull. I wouldn't even thought about the Maguire contact, didn't even care. I do think he hits him a little bit low and maybe impedes him slightly, and there's some issues with the contact, but it's clearly the two-handed pull. That's one you just look at and be like, yeah, it's a foul, move on. So what I guess I don't understand is either they don't have that angle, which would be absolutely embarrassing, or they literally looked at that angle and thought review the Maguire thing, which to me is not just incompetence. That's when you should ask some questions. And I'm sorry, the whole point of the Premier League and all this, why we do this and why they even put this stupid league on is for the fans and the supporters. That's the whole point of this. It's entertainment. It's supposed to be. And so if fans have questions about the integrity of the game, that is the numero uno thing that you cannot have. And it is very difficult for me to play out a scenario where there's either not gross incompetence here and someone should be fired. I mean, seriously. I think the other problem is, too, the PGMOL does not support the referees at all. No chance is any ref going to have a chance to say anything about this and speak their mind to say, hey, this is what it's about. And the head ref, he's screwed. He is in an impossible situation when he's being dictated by someone in a booth what the call is. He doesn't think about it. There's just like the head referee wanted to go to the screen before. Some of them no doubt did. And PGMOL said no. So think about that. Already you're putting them in a bad situation because there are times where they couldn't see what they wanted to see. They had a bad angle and they would have loved to have the benefit of the screen. The point of the screen is supposed to be a benefit. So in this point, you're sending them over there, which is a mockery anyway, the process, knowing that they have to stick with whatever the call's in the booth. It's just not fair. It's not helpful for them at all, to me. I don't understand it. You let these guys scream in their face constantly as well, too. They're not treated well. And I understand there's an issue, an epidemic where referees are not, no one wants to referee because of these things. They could do things to fix that. I mean, this has got to be one of the worst unions in the history of the world. I mean, what are you doing exactly? Seriously, what are you doing as a union? Awesome job there. Really smooth, guys. And we feel cheated. And I still think we were cheated. So
I would like to say one thing, from a narrative perspective, I don't understand, why the Premier League wants to help United in this specific situation.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, if we won, we'd be now 3 points ahead of them or 4 points ahead of them, right? But instead we drew, so we're still ahead of them. So it's they're not fighting for Europe. They're not gonna get relegated. So it's of all years for you guys to kind of pull this corruption card, you decide to choose now, which makes zero sense.
Well, yeah, and they're not going down. I mean, that's the thing. They're really not. I mean, after watching Ipswich today, we're pretty safe, I think, as well, knock on wood. But yeah, I mean, you could create drama by them getting their butts kicked. I mean, that would be a much better storyline when you just start asking questions. You're like, well, then why do they have so much power and authority? Who is in it? It's hard to watch that second half and think that there was an influence there. He totally changed the way he was refereeing. And I'm not saying I think it's fair to ask questions, man. Why would you referee that way? I normally I'd be like, well, they're just not very good, or they're not well supported, or it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy to do.
Well, we know Ryan Ratcliffe's not paying off the refs because Amarin barely can afford an outfit for today's match. Coming in as joggers
on there. Seriously, their fans better dressed than that guy, and they're in casual attire. I mean, at least get the nicest thing from the club shop, man. What is going on there?
He's got the streetwear on while Sir Alex Ferguson in the full suit watches from the stands. I can only imagine what he made of that outfit.
He took advantage of the 60% off sale that was going on the United website and decided to, go into his budget to to purchase something. Dark times, man, dark times.
I think he's channeling his inner Bill Belichick at this point. But the problem is you'd have to pay Bill Belichick to come and head coach anyone. And apparently United needs to. Well, the thing is, like, if the result went worse and they dropped lower in the table, then they'd have to fire more menial staff, to make up the big difference. Because you fire 100 of them making nothing is really going to make the big impact. You know what I mean? Awesome. What a lovely. I feel bad for United supporters at this point too, very much. I mean, I'm frustrated at this result. It should have been 3 points to us, but fundamentally, this club is not well run right now, and it's got to be frustrating. The PR just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But looking at the numbers after the match, it's all set pieces from United, really. I mean, even at the end of the day, we didn't create a whole lot in the second half, but a lot of that's game state. We still created more in the second half in many ways than they did. I mean, all their chances were from set play. I mean, they had 0.28 XG from set plays. Almost nothing from open play. We actually had a higher XG in the second half and a couple big chances. We had 2 chances in that second half that we missed, and I don't know if they'd really call them big. Some of it's unlucky. Like Doucouré cracked that cross really well. Just happened to hit it at Onana, and I think Beto had a pretty good header as well, too. It just kind of went at him. But yeah, I mean, United committing only 5 fouls. I know they have the ball a lot, but what do you think about what Moyes said after this one?
So the quote from Moyes, brought to us by Everton Newsfeed, the Toffee Blues. We're all looking forward to a referee saying, no, I'm sticking with it. If it's absolutely clear and obvious that it's wrong, then fine, but I didn't think VAR needed to get involved, from David Moyes. I mean, I think that's spot on. That's sort of exactly what we've been saying. At what point do the referees stand by their call and sort of defend themselves and insist that they didn't make a clear and obvious error? And again, the very definition of clear and obvious error is totally up for debate. There's it's not an objective thing, and clearly they're just interpreting it in a certain way when it's convenient for certain parties, which is crazy.
And look, I think we agree that this is a difficult game to officiate, but it's okay that it's subjective as long as it's one person's subjectivity. To me, that's the point of having the head referee. They're going to be subjective in the way they apply the rule book, and that's okay as long as it's consistent. And when you force a guy to go to a screen, which is a joke because they don't clearly have the ability to stick with their call. Like, think about that. Like, you're going to the screen, and it's funny, he took his time with this one, like pretending like he had a choice. He doesn't. So what a farce. I mean, I just, if I'm the referees, I just don't understand why you aren't going back to like your union guys saying, you're hanging me out to dry here, man. You're making this so much worse for me, and it's just going to happen where these referees are going to, I mean, it's high stress to begin with. I mean, they're going to start cracking like what, Kavanaugh?
But I think, Ryan, when we look at the Palace match and how that was reffed and look at today, right? I mean, it's just complete 180, right? About Anthony Taylor essentially having control of the match, not giving these unnecessary yellows, right? I understand gameplay and whatnot took advantage of that. But, like, yeah, it's just, to me, like, yeah, it's just, it's really unfortunate when we really can look at just, like, we wouldn't have even been in that situation if Anthony Taylor essentially was refereeing what he did last week to today, because we wouldn't have had those 2 goals happen simply for, unnecessary fouls. The yellows would have been much more balanced. So, yeah, it's just, I feel bad for Andy Madley in the sense of, to your point, like, being hung out to dry in that specific VAR situation. But, yeah, just ridiculous.
Crazy. The only yellow United got that's one for time wasting the entire match. I mean,
that is insane. The problem with this is I can't go back and do analysis and think this, that, and the other thing. It's hard to ignore that the referee wasn't the story. Mike Leslie at PTK Toffee. How has Maguire left the park without a booking there? Hauls Beto down, then dives twice trying to get a pen. RJ Altman. Second dive, hilarious. Has 50 pounds on Jack Harrison, who doesn't touch him. That dive was unbelievable. I mean, the other thing is, too, you realize that by never calling dives and never giving yellow cards for dives, all you do is encourage it. You make your refereeing more difficult. So that has to be from above. Clearly has to be from above. To me, I would be throwing yellows out like crazy at dives, because the first time you do it, they don't do it again. And I still think in VAR should be able to go in and give a yellow. So in theory, if there wasn't enough of a foul for Young, he should get a yellow for diving, right? And then he gets sent off.
I actually think that's such a good point, that you give VAR the authority to review fouls and deem if something is a flop. It's a dangerous
I think
door
you
to
can.
open.
I actually thought I thought in other leagues you could do that. I'm going to have to go back and double check that one, but you never see it.
No, never. And they have to do something about it because it's cheating and it ruins the game. So I hope that they do something. That said, you introduce new avenues for VAR to impact the game, and you also open up new doors for the way that it's used in England to just be completely just misused.
Well, fundamentally, I mean, the root of the cause, or the root of the problem is the PGMOL. I mean, there's nothing else. They still have to apply it. That's fundamentally what the issue is. So it doesn't matter if you have all these great ideas on how you want to improve the game and make it better. And the funny part is they've been effective because there's still plenty of people out there that think we should just do away with VAR in the Premier League whatsoever. And that's fine. You can think that. And that's okay if you think that. As far as I'm concerned, though, think about it too. Like, we don't have semi-automated offsides. Do we lack money in the Premier League? Is that the problem? I think the other thing is too, I mean, why would you not open up the league potentially for international referees? Have the best and brightest. You have the best and brightest players out there. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with keeping it, you know what I mean, within in-house, and I respect, nations and blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, like, there's just so many things that they could do that would be better, but clearly there are forces and powers that be that don't want it to be better. It's just, and to me, if anyone's against VAR, that's fine. I would welcome them to go watch a CONCACAF qualifying match on the road for the U.S. at some point. Just watch one. Pick any of them. Don't care which one. Costa Rica, Honduras, any of them. Go watch one on the road and tell me you don't want VAR. That's fine.
All you have to do is watch the most recent rounds of the FA Cup where they don't have VAR, and you can see how horrible. Do you think they miss calls now? They miss way more without the ability to review.
The threat is important. I mean, I hate that it's so slow. It sucks, man. I want to be able to spontaneously celebrate goals and things like that. I get it. But it does deter a lot of the off-the-ball shenanigans stuff. I think that's probably its best use for it. Regardless, Everton still played a pretty darn good match here. I don't think we should take anything away from the fact that a lot of it was game state at the end of the match. A lot of it was just the officials. I mean, I really feel like we got cheated in many ways, and I hate to say that as someone that, has a professional background in this sport and is currently employed as a professional, to say something as childish as that, but I really believe it. I felt like they got hosed. And to me, the first one's Jake O'Brien. I mean, you guys got in the dock first. I get it. But I thought Jake O'Brien was incredible today, really. I mean, 8 recoveries, tied for the team lead along with Ghana, who was superhuman today, ignoring goalkeepers. 8 clearances, led the team. 4 headed clearances, by the way. 5 for 8 in aerials overall. But the thing is, he also contributed to the attack. I mean, they pushed him high a couple times to flick on for Dukes. 10 passes into the final third, led the team. 2 for 4 in crosses, including that fantastic carrying cross to Dukes. And I thought him teaming up with Lindstrom, they looked really, really good attacking on the right side. So kudos to Jake O'Brien. He just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, and for me, as Ryan said, I did get in the dock a little bit earlier, so I chose Ghana. 11 tackles, just to let you know. The rest of the team had 13, so just to show you exactly, truly, man was everywhere today. 2 interceptions, 3 clearances, 87.5% pass accuracy. 1 shot on target, that's very big for Ghana, so happy for him there. And then, of course, as James mentioned in the last pod, which I think just needs to be on a poster somewhere, Casemiro is 32, Ghana is 35. Do with that what you will. Just incredible.
Stunning. The difference, you wouldn't even, I mean, you'd think Ghana was like 22, the way he puts himself around the pitch. It's incredible. And long may it continue. And it's funny because Ryan had the effusive praise for Ghana, deservedly so. And then Shan gets in the dock first and steals him as the top pick for man of the match. But I went with Doucouré. Of course, it's really hard not to pick him for a goal and an assist in today's match, but also the contributions, especially in the first half, to the press, in his ball retention as well. He was tied with O'Brien for most completed passes in the team, and he was 30 for 35 in passes, which is really impressive considering how far up the pitch he was. Oftentimes, he also had 2 shots on target and only took 2 shots. Both of his aerials, 1 for 7 in ground duels, but because you're pressing really aggressively, you're going to get bypassed a little bit. So I won't hold that too much against him. I just thought he came back in and to what you said earlier, Shan, maybe feeling under threat a little bit with Alcaraz. Such a good showing last match, showed what he's capable of and why he's been the go-to and so instrumental to Everton's performances over the course of the last several years. Another honorable mention, Jared Branthwaite. Again, we talked about some of his individual plays, but he was 7 for 8 in duels today. They did absolutely nothing. Højlund was a complete waste of space for the majority of the match until he was eventually yanked. And Branthwaite, again, it took him a little bit to get back up to speed. Perhaps it was due to injury, but now he's on a sensational run of form, and you got to think that Ratcliffe and the United recruitment team are looking at that performance today and thinking, we could have had that if we just weren't so stingy. And thankfully they don't, because he is so pivotal to our defensive unit.
Well, they're going to have to fire some lower-level staff, get rid of the cooks, maybe outsource things to their buddies, so they can make money. And that's all it would have taken. If they'd just fired more lower level people, they could have signed him. But oh well. See, that's Everton in the community right there. You notice what I mean? We're looking out for the little people across the board.
Yeah, and then going into comments, we'll start with BG at BCG Rose. Great first half, but the team seemed to run out of energy and ultimately couldn't overcome both the poor refereeing and tiring legs. I would have been happy with the point before kickoff, but giving up the lead and the ridiculous VAR overturn of the penalty had left me gutted. I think that's a good summary.
But you don't have the depth to. Ghana was exhausted by the end of it. He was all over the place. That guy deserves some sort of award for what he's doing at his age. We just don't have the guy to go in for him. When Tim is your response to sub in for Garner, who is not suited, in my opinion, to play in that deeper role whatsoever, you've got what you got. That's all what you have. So I can't totally be critical. It's nothing about Moyes, too. It's just the state of play. It's state of the team right now.
I also think Jesper coming off was a pretty big blow to us, just because, of course, Young, I think, in that specific spot was a downgrade, and just what Jesper was doing to progress the ball, threaten United, basically, it just, and then to your point, Ryan, it's just Ghana and Doucouré even, he was doing a really good job, I was going to say, possessing the ball and making smart decisions, but you could tell the engine was kind of running out of fuel after a certain point, which is, totally understandable.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you think about what Lindstrom was doing, getting in behind Dorku, and really his pace was really making things difficult for Delete, and that was our matchup, really. That's what we were exploiting and doing it very, very well. I think that combined with the yellow on O'Brien took away some of the aggressiveness down there. It just goes to show you, when Jesper has a little bit of time and space, he's so quality on the ball. He just hasn't had that much, and now you got a slow poke out there at left center back that you can exploit and give yourself time, and he had it. It's I do, it's Sean's good point, guys. I think if Jesper goes longer here, we probably don't see the result that we do, because he's our one guy with pace that can be vertical, even if that's not necessarily even his strong suit. Shows you what a good player he really is.
Even still, we talked about it earlier, I don't know how much you can overcome the bizarre change in refereeing decision making. It's just so strange, but agreed that was a big loss, and hopefully he's able to recover from his illness and it's nothing sort of long term, because I think he's really, really staked a claim on that right-hand side, and glad that he continues to kind of grow into the team and performances continue to trend in the right direction. Next up, we have Sledvigs from the Discord, who said, fantastic first half. Agreed. Second half, we controlled until about the 75th minute. Ref and VAR seemed hell-bent on getting United back in it. The 3-minute review of Beto's goal was just a sign of things to come. Phantom fouls, yellow for us and nothing for them, United flopping all over. That ultimately was the difference. And ends with, it's nice being comfortably mid-table. Yeah, it's nice when these sorts of robberies and slights don't end with us in a sort of state of despair about the fact that we may be headed for another relegation battle. It doesn't hit quite the same with the same level of gravity when you're sitting in 14th place. I will say that. So there are some positive things to take away. Again, we drew. It feels like a loss because of the nature of the game state and everything, but we still took a point from United, and we had lost, I think, our previous 6 against Manchester United, so it would have been nice to get that win, the late penalty. We'll wrap on comments with, I think, a couple from first Stephen M. Williams. Such a bad decision at the end ruins the game. In reality, great first half. Lack of depth, I think, caught up with us last 20. So short in attacking areas. It's clearly a terrible call at the end, though. Just can't get my head around how bad it was. I think we'd all fully agree with you, Steve.
Yeah, and then we have Peter Appleby at Peter Abbott 68. What exactly would a Man U player need to do to draw a yellow? The reversal of that pen is a joke. He's pulled down by 2 players and tripped. The behind the goal angle was clear, but VAR used the pan shot. Why would they do that? You decide. I have my own view. We have our own views too, Peter. Totally agree. So going into the upcoming schedule, as we've kind of mentioned, this is kind of the friendlier part of what we've faced. Of course, today, just tough result, but still positive direction. At Brentford Wednesday, so midweek match. And then we get a little bit of a break given that we're out of the FA Cup. So about a 10-day rest for Wolves at Wolves, which will be good because I think the team definitely needs the rest. And then that next week against West Ham, and then we have that international break, I believe. So we have another 2-week break for some of our guys going into the quadrant of April. So as James mentioned on the last pod, and some great feedback from Nathan Brackens, going into a preview of the Brentford match. So a few statistics to kind of talk about. Last year, they were 11th in X points. This year, 12th. As we've kind of talked about in the Discord, slowed down a little bit after that hot start. But I will say, after selling Ivan Toney, this team has not missed a beat in terms of their offensive continuity. It just goes to show you the complete opposite of United and Brentford in terms of continuity, good recruitment, and whatnot. So Kevin Mbeumo has 15 goals this year, Yohan Wissa 12, Kevin Schade 7. And I think one guy to really highlight for those that don't watch Brentford is Mikhail Damsgaard. He has done really a good job this year of kind of playing that more attacking mid, really linking the defense to attack. He has 10 assists. I know Ryan how much he loves that statistic. But I will say also too, Mark Flecken, who I've criticized pretty heavily last year, just thought he was a horrific keeper. He's done great for them this year. He's kind of up there with Matt Sells and really guys that have really rebounded from their initial PL seasons. So a lot of credit to him. Of course, at Goodison had a great game in that 0-0 draw. I think where they could probably be had, I don't think Rico Henry will be fit for that game. He's a big loss for them. But yeah, defensively, they're not the greatest team. Of course, on set pieces, they're definitely going to be a threat, right? Of course, Thomas Frank, as we've talked about, incredible manager and does a really good job of drilling as much talent or much out of that talent as he can. But it's going to be a tough game for us Wednesdays, once again on a short week. But I definitely think it's a game that, similar to Palace, we can get a result. It's more than possible.
Yeah, I mean, look, Moyes has us with the draw today. It's been a while since we've had to talk about really a meaningful loss, and I think it puts us in a really good position. Brentford will be, I think, a good litmus test because they're the best team we've played in a number of weeks, so it'll be a big test for the squad. But as you mentioned, those couple of breaks that we have coming up, I think are going to be really crucial for the run down the stretch. Get a couple of guys healthy. The lack of depth on the bench week after week, the fact that we're still getting results in spite of all that is really a testament to guys filling gaps and doing a really impressive job with the limited talent that we have to begin with. When you have 4 or 5 guys who could potentially be starting for this team who are unavailable, it really just makes it all the more remarkable.
Yeah, and I think to that point, James, hopefully, a few kind of dates that we've kind of heard. Broja, and I've heard on Twitter and just kind of some sources that March 7th is kind of the date, which could coincide with the Wolves match, so he could be back for that. Trimiti, of course, on the grass, right? Whatever that means according to kind of our wordplay, but hopefully he's maybe back for that Wolves match. And then, of course, a pretty positive update from the presser this week on Njai, taking kind of cortisone shots, it seems like, and they think that he could be potentially ahead of schedule. So it'd be incredible if he could be ready for that Wolves match, but even the West Ham match, because, yeah, you could tell in a game like today how crucial he would have been to really kind of run at some of those, porous defenders. So hopefully we get some of those guys back because, yeah, to your point, it'd be a massive help. 1 to the rotation, but 2 to the quality of the squad.
Fundamentally, though, that's one where the last thing you want to do is bring Njai back too early. He's the one guy that you think going forward is going to be like locked in above Premier League average type player, so you don't want to mess with him at all. Look, Brentford are pretty good. I mean, and you look at Brentford, at Wolves, and West Ham at home the next 3. To me, I think the goal is to be safe after that. We're at 31 points. We're in 14th. We're just 2 points behind 12th and 13th. Leicester looks pretty dead in the water right now. They're at 17, and so are Ipswich. So they've got 12 matches left. Either of those two, I mean, we talked about how many wins we think they could possibly ever get out of those. Probably not too many, but even if they got lucky and got, 5 wins and a couple draws out of that, you're looking at 15, 17, 18, whatever. I mean, to me, a win and it's over. So I just cannot see any of them getting 35 points. If we're at 34 points, especially with the goal goal differential, I think we're safe. And there's no reason why we couldn't get 3 points get a win out of one of the next three. But draws aren't the worst result either. And we'll see how it goes. Yeah, Brentford is playing fine, but I mean, I'm not going to sit there and point at a slaughtering of Leicester and a 1-0 nick of a win against West Ham as some sort of evidence of great performance, especially when you've got, like, Mbeumo had a great finish again today. I think that puts his, exceeding XG numbers at, second or third in the league at this point, So they've finished pretty well and done well with their chances, but they're not unbeatable by any stretch.
Be a good test, and we'll look forward to it, and we'll, of course, be with you following that match for a full recap. Hopefully get back to our winning ways, and really, I guess, although we conceded to today, we're continuing to score multiple goals across a run of matches, which in itself just feels like such a far cry from what we've experienced in the recent past. So I think that's a good note to end on. We will, again, very much look forward to the Brentford match and look forward to recapping it. But we hope that you enjoyed this recap. Unfortunate result, but we move on upwards and hopefully to safety. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, do us a solid. Please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Share the episode on social media. Interact with us. Reach out. You can find all the links in the description of this episode. One last shout out for the NA Toffees. We hope that despite the disappointing result, you still had an amazing trip in Goodison's final season. And with that, we'll leave you until next time. Up the Toffees.